So this is how to on cleaning an airless sprayer. We're going to start with prep. Before we clean a sprayer, we want to make sure we always have our synthetic underlayment underneath it taped down in at least a 5x5 area. If we're inside, everything's already prepped with this stuff. But then this gives us our waterproofing system, so if there's any paint spill, any thinner spill, any of it, this will catch it 100%. We always put a canvas drop cloth over it as well. We even have a little 4 foot by 5 foot we put just under the sprayer, so any little drips and stuff get absorbed by the canvas. Here we're in our spray booth, so it doesn't matter, but make sure on site that you have this stuff. So depending on the kind of paint that you have will depend on what you use for cleaning. Typically it's going to say somewhere in the back of what you use for cleaning. Sometimes it's up here, sometimes it's down here. You just have to find what it says for cleaning. But this is latex paint, so water-based paint. So this we clean up with water. If we're using an oil-based paint, we have paint thinner. If we're using a solvent-based, like a lacquer, primarily a lacquer, we use lacquer thinner, and we'll talk about the versatility of this in a little bit. If we're using a shellac primer, which is primarily what we use for interior priming, denatured alcohol works the best. We only use this for shellac primer. Again, it says on the shellac primer to clean with denatured alcohol. Acetone, we're typically not doing any entire cleaning. This is a very, very hot solvent. It cuts about anything, but it can also, if it sits for very long, it can dissolve gaskets and stuff that we don't want to dissolve. But this works great for if we let some paint dry somewhere and we have to clean out dried paint, we use acetone to do that because it'll dissolve even dried paint. Now, even if we have an oil-based paint where we're typically using paint thinner or a shellac primer, you can get away with lacquer thinner. So if all you have, because we have lacquer thinner around here by the 5-gallon bucket, if all you have is lacquer thinner and you're out of the other products, you can get away with lacquer thinner. But what we have here in the sprayer is a latex paint, so we're going to clean with hot water, which we have here. Okay, then we have our sprayer pack out, and so you've got all your filters, brushes, all your tips, everything in here, right? We're going to go over some of the things that we're going to use to clean it. We've got our wrenches under here. We've got more brushes. There's plastic, brass, and metal, and then we've got little wrenches, and then replacement filters for the filter, the main filter on the sprayer here. And then we've got the little filters for the different kinds of guns to actually replace the filter in the spray gun. So now we're going to get to our protective wear. Because it's just latex water-based paint, we're just going to use our disposable gloves. If we're doing anything with solvents, any of these products in here, we can get away with paint thinner. It won't dissolve these gloves. With the lacquer thinner, acetone, or denatured alcohol, it's best to use the chemical gloves. So this is going to assume that you already know the basics of how to operate a sprayer. So we're just going to skim over it real quick, the functions. Over here on this side, we have an on-off switch. Right now it's off, right now it's on. Then you have the pressure switch. Clockwise is up, it says it here, max, and then down. And then on the reverse side over here, we have the prime valve, which makes the product either go through the prime tube out here, or when you put it up horizontal, it comes out the hose. And that's very critical when cleaning. Only when you're cleaning and when you're first setting up your sprayer do you ever use this prime valve. So if we had just taken our inlet out of our paint can, we're going to put it in our clean bucket. Now this is relatively clean water, and this is our dirty bucket. We're always going to have a dirty bucket, we're always going to have a clean bucket. If it's water, I'm usually using a 5-gallon bucket because I can just put hot water in it. I prefer hot water. Here we have the mop sink, so we can do hot water. If you're on site, just use cold water wherever you can get. But then if I'm using solvent, I'm usually using these little cans, clean cans here, because I'm not wanting to use a ton of solvent because of the cost of it. So we're putting our inlet in our clean bucket, and then we have our prime tube. Very important that as you turn up the pressure and you switch the prime valve to have the product come out this prime tube, you're holding onto it. So when this builds pressure, it doesn't flip and spray, okay? I've had that happen. You just kick it over, it builds pressure, and it just shoots out, and it'll create a big spray of paint everywhere. So you want to hold it, you want to control it in your waste can. So now we're going to turn it on. It builds up pressure, whatever pressure was lost. Now you can see I'm pointing the prime tube down here. And now I'm going to kick over to prime, and we're going to let all of the paint go into the waste can until water starts to come out, right? So this might be dirty water until clean water, but it's usually gonna take about 10 seconds or so to let all of that Okay, so now we've got all of our paint out of our sprayer, and now all that's left is all the paint in our entire hose. So now I'm gonna make sure that my pressure is where I want it. I've already kicked it back up, so now it'll be sending the water, which is our cleaner, whatever that cleaner needs to be, out through the pump and out the hose. Now we're gonna get over to our sprayer. Now what we typically do is we're actually gonna open up our can of product. We're gonna take our tip out, so we're gonna loosen up our housing, take our tip out, set it aside, tighten this back up, and we would actually spray for 25 seconds. Going full blast, just shooting product back into our can to save it, because there's about a quart of product in the line. And so if you go 25 seconds, that still leaves about 5 seconds of product in the line, so it's very safe. You're not gonna end up getting any paint or anything, or sorry, any water or cleaner in your paint. So we're gonna pretend we already shot 25 seconds, so now we're down to just a little bit left in. So we're gonna go over here, and we're just gonna be shooting. We're gonna start very, very slow as we pull the trigger, because we don't wanna just blast it and spray that everywhere. So we're aiming at the side of our bucket, start very, very slowly squeezing. Then we're just gonna be running this for a solid 30 seconds. We're just getting our cleaner in our line and just cycling it through, trying to get all of that old product out. Now, when we're using solvent, where we're trying to save the product, we're not wanting to just go through gallons of this product, I usually go for about 10 or 15 seconds after we've got all the paint out, and you can see it actually starts to clean up a little bit, and then I'll actually start spraying it back into where my inlet is. So if I have this bucket here that my inlet is in that has my lacquer thinner or whatever it is, I'll actually put it down in there. I'll be spraying as it's coming out. Basically, I'm just cycling that cleaner around and around for a solid 30-45 seconds, just trying to get all that product loose. Okay, now here, water's cheap, so I'm just gonna put it all in my waste bucket. All right, so I just turn the sprayer off, and I drain most of the pressure. Now we're actually going, one thing I always do is just out of habit, I always lock the trigger, just like I do on any power tool, just like you would a firearm. There's a little lock right here, so I just, out of habit, I lock it, so that if I were to pick it up on the trigger and accidentally squeeze, I'm not gonna be spraying in a client's home somewhere and causing damage. So just always lock when I'm not in use. Now we're gonna come back over here, and we're gonna release whatever pressure is left. Remember, we already have it off, so we're gonna hold the prime tube. We're gonna go down to prime. Okay, now we already released the pressure, so that wasn't any in there, but a lot of times there'll be a little bit of pressure that comes out. So now the line is not pressurized. We've already cleaned it. So the line, we've already run cleaner through the pump, already run cleaner through the line, out the end. Now we have the filters, so we're gonna come over to our gun. We're gonna set our housing and tip aside. We'll soak those later. But we're going to disconnect. It's a little spring here. You disconnect up there, and that separates this guard. And now you can just twist the head off, and that exposes the filter inside this pump. Usually that's pretty cruddy because it's catching any bad paint, and it pulls out really easily out of the gun there. So depending on how bad this filter is, sometimes you can just clean off the crud and rinse it, and it's good to go again. Sometimes you have to throw it out, just see how it rinses. If it gets pretty clean, then you can reuse it. If it's still clogged up or dried because it's had paint sitting in there for too long, just throw them out, and that's why we have new ones in here. But when you're done, you always want to make sure you've got a good filter in the gun for the next guy, so when they come along to use it, they're not up a creek without a paddle. Okay, so now we're gonna get our brush in here. Here we have 3 different types of brushes. We have a plastic bristle, we have a brass bristle, and we have a metal. Here it's totally fine to use metal because this is not a sensitive area, and we're just trying to get it all loose. And then we have this VTech cleaner that's in the kit. We have it here at the shop too. And we're just gonna go towards our waist, and we're just gonna spray it clean it out. Be very careful this doesn't spray towards your eyes, or if you are questionable, use safety glasses. Okay, so now that's clean. Do the same thing up here with the housing. Just spray it a little bit, let that drain. Okay, now this filter is, it's pretty good. I'm gonna clean off just a little bit with this. So I'm gonna reuse this filter, I think it's fine. So I'm gonna push it up in there first, and then we're going to screw the head back on the handle and then clip it back up. Okay, now we have the filter here on the sprayer. And a lot of times you can just loosen it by hand. If you can't, that's what the channel locks are for. You can grab them and turn it. It's always going to drain some cleaner out of here. Again, that's what's very important, to have the protection underneath the sprayer. You never want there to be any bleed through onto a client's sidewalk or garage or anything. So now we're just cleaning that out best we can. Again, same process, and knock off everything that we can. Then we're going to rinse it and see if it's savable. If it's not, then we're going to trash it. That's looking like it'll be very cleanable. And we're gonna go ahead and put the same filter back in. It's possible that the person using the next, the sprayer again, will need a different filter, because we have two different meshes. This is for like really thick latex paint, and this is for like a lacquer and stain and fine product. We were using latex, this is the big one, but look at the video on how to spray. You'll know which one actually to have in, but we're gonna put it back in so at least there's something in there for the next guy. Okay, so now we're just gonna rinse this out. And again, this is not a sensitive area, so we can use our metal brush to get it clean, get it down in there. Just gonna rinse it a few times. And again, we'd be doing all this with whatever solvent or cleaner that is necessary that cuts the paint. And then if there's any that's dried up or caked on, again, you can use the VTech cleaner and the wire brush to clean that up. Okay. And then you can go ahead and look at the threads on this. It's gonna be hard to see. Basically get up in there with the wire brush, same thing. And you're just trying to clean off those threads, because otherwise you can get dried paint in there and it can lock the threads and make it hard to take off. So I'm just gonna spray that, get that clean. All right, now we're ready to push that back in and just thread it back into the pump. All right, now what we have left is we have the tip and the housing. Typically, I'm always soaking those in either acetone or lacquer thinner in a little bucket. If you're in the field and you just need to clean them decent, use this and use a brass brush or a plastic brush, because this is a very sensitive part here with these tips. These are very, very tiny orifices, and the metal is too hard. It can scratch the orifice and change the atomization. And so use brass or use plastic. We're gonna go ahead and soften it up with this, as if we were in the field and didn't have the products we wanted to soak it. We just want to make sure we're cleaning out that tip. You can see where that orifice is now. We're going to do the same thing on the back side, trying to get those bristles in there, cleaning it out, and then cleaning it off. And we're going to just repeat until it's clean. This metal part is what's important to be clean. The rest of this will all come off whenever we soak it. We're back at the shop, but we can do a quick pass, just keeping that decent. And it should actually be able to spray all the way through if it's clean. And again, either wear safety glasses or have this pointed away from you very carefully, because this is a very strong solvent. Okay, so once we get that clean, we set that aside. We do the same thing with the housing. This is not sensitive, so you just use a wire brush. In this case, we're just gonna be soaking them both in lacquer thinner, because lacquer thinner will dissolve the dried paint. Just cover it up, let it soak. After a few hours, we'll come back and clean that. Last step in the cleaning is we're actually going to clean off this inlet. So we're just gonna unscrew it. Usually there's dried paint along here, where every now and again we'll actually clean that off with a 5-in-1 scraper. But we're just gonna make sure that our inlet filter is clean enough that it can be reused. This is just for filtering out big rocks, leaves, crud like that. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but we don't want it to be all covered in paint where it doesn't operate for the next guy. So we can clean the threads, and it shouldn't be dry here, so we should be able to get it decent, because it should have been soaking in paint or water the entire time. But the rest of the inlet pipe is not that way, because it sits exposed, and so this paint dries. That's normal. Just gonna clean the threads off, screw this back on. And then if you were going to be spraying a product that, what I call hot, a solvent-based product like a lacquer, you would need to clean this paint off, because it will actually dissolve. So if you're using a product that has a strong enough solvent base that it will dissolve dried product, you need to do that prior to putting this in your new paint, because you don't want it to discolor your paint. Okay, now the last step is we don't want to store water in the pump, because it can cause rust, and it does not lubricate, and it can freeze. So we're always going to fill the pump with paint thinner. So we're gonna have our little can. Again, we don't want to use a big bucket, because it has quite a bit of waste. I'm gonna put paint thinner in there, and it takes about a quart to fill it, but we always need a little bit more than that, because of the amount that has to be in there for it to build pressure, because it's airless, you can't have any air in the system. So we're gonna fill this about half full, maybe 2/3. Now we're gonna basically do the same process. Place the water with the paint thinner, holding our prime tube. We're gonna kick it over to prime. It's already at prime. We're gonna kick it on. So what we're doing here, more than just cycling product through, is we're actually getting the air out of the system. Again, you can refer to the how to use a sprayer video, but as it's sucking product up, there's air that is forcing out. So it pushes the air all the way through and out this prime line, rather than having to push it all the way out the 50-foot line. So this is actually, it's why it's called priming. You're priming the pump, but just to get product through any of it, you always have to prime first and get the air out of the system, because this is an airless sprayer, will not work with an air bubble in there, it just won't build pressure. So now that we've gotten product, the paint thinner through here, through the pump, out the prime tube, now we've kicked it up to horizontal, so now it's gonna be sending product out the line. And so now we're going to let all of our water, or if this is solvent, we could put it back in our solvent can to be reused later. But in this case, it's just water, so we're just gonna throw it in the waste tube. And sometimes you can hear it, sometimes, if not, a lot of times you can smell it when it switches from water to paint thinner. Good, I can hear that. So we have now completed our cleaning process of our pump, our hose, our inlet, our filters. All that's left is cleaning these, which is just after it soaks, you can even start to see the paint's already starting to come up. And we use a wire brush and the sprayer. We can clean all that up, get that back to brand new. Same thing with our tip. And then we put it back in its respective spot in the airless bin, coil up the hose, the cord, and it's ready to go for the next use.